When my son excluded me from his wedding to avoid awkwardness, I uncovered an incredible truth. The news sliced through Sarah like a scalpel, the words "I'm not inviting you to my wedding," Mom echoing in her mind. How could Jake do this? After all the sleepless nights, the tears shed to keep him safe from a father who never cared. This was the ultimate betrayal. He thinks it best to shield himself from any awkwardness related to the man Sarah had worked tirelessly to keep out of their lives. A man she despised for abandoning their family. Confusion enveloped her, twisting around her heart like a vice grip. Had she sacrificed everything for a son who would ultimately reject her? In the small confines of their aging home, Sarah felt suffocated, the walls reverberating with memories of endless struggle nights spent at the hospital, weekends missed, all to give Jake a brighter future. The smell of old paper wafted from his room. Curiosity gnawed at her, and she crossed the threshold, discovering the treasures of his past, his journals. As she flipped through the pages, a shiver ran down her spine. Inside, Jake had chronicled battles she knew nothing about, confessions of feeling torn between two worlds, between a mother's love and a father's absence. Pain flooded her chest as she read about his fears of her struggling social status, a constant question of who he really was. It wasn't just about her. It was about him as well. Before she could process this raw revelation, another shockwave crashed through her like a tidal wave on the coast. Rumors in town hinted that the future in-laws were critical of her quiet life as a nurse, her modest home. They offered Jake a world filled with glitter and glam while Sarah had given him warmth and resilience. But apparently, that wasn't enough. Her heart raced, the walls of her reality closing in around her. Should she confront them? But what good would it do? Her mind raced with potential confrontations, picturing their disdain, the judgment in their eyes. Each scenario left her feeling more dejected than the last, anchoring her in a whirlpool of desperation. As the wedding day loomed closer, Sarah began conversations with herself, convincing herself she could let go, that maybe silence was the best course. But just as she started to gather some resolve, her deceased mother's locket found its way back into her hands. It unlatched with trembling fingers, revealing curious documents tucked inside family secrets long buried, hints of ties that could shatter everything she thought she knew about her lineage and her connection to Jake. Could it be that all her worries over their bond had been misplaced? Her stomach twisted, mixing excitement with dread. What if these revelations could change Jake's perception of her? Or would they drive an even bigger wedge, creating an unbridgeable gap? She could feel the mighty wave of her emotions building, the uncertainty morphing into something fierce and raw. What does it mean to truly be a mother when the connection you cherish feels threatened, challenged by circumstances and relationships outside your control? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The weight of the heirloom nestled against her chest, clashing with her desire to shield Jake from their possible unwelcoming future in-laws. Should she confront these people who would question her worth, risking losing what little connection remained with Jake? Torn between her protective instincts and her yearning to be seen, the pull from both sides left her drowning in agony. The clock was ticking and she was running out of time to decide whether the uncovering of these hidden truths would be a blessing or a curse for them, an answer that could either destroy her relationship with Jake or weave it back together into something stronger. The following morning, Sarah awoke to a vivid sunrise that cast gentle rays through her window, bathing her room in soft orange hues. Yet the warmth of the light felt cold against the dread curling in her stomach. Today could not pass without action. Determined not to remain a passive observer in her own life, she made her way to the kitchen, each step echoing her resolve. As she poured herself a cup of coffee, its aroma filled the air, mingling with the anxiety that loomed over her decisions. While the steam curled towards the ceiling, whispering of new beginnings, she peered out the window, haunted by memories of a hesitantly joyful Jake learning to ride his bike, his shouts of triumph cutting through the evening air. How had they drifted so far apart? With a renewed sense of purpose, she retrieved her mother's locket from her pocket. This artifact of her past felt more significant than ever. Maybe it was time to explore the truths it held, to fathom whether the buried secrets were a bridge to understanding Jake's choices, or merely detours that would further isolate them. As she fumbled with the latch, she promised herself that whatever lay hidden inside its delicate casing wouldn't intimidate her. It would empower her. After a substantial amount of time contemplating her next step, Sarah chose to make a visit to the local historical society. This place was a repository of stories, filled with the essence of those who came before her. Perhaps it could also offer insights that would help illuminate the tangled web of her family's past and lead her towards understanding who she was, and more critically, who she wanted to be as a mother. The musty smell of old paper and ink greeted her upon entering the small brick building. Shelves lined with prints and documents from generations past met her gaze. A vast landscape of lives lived before her. Lost in time yet alive with the promise of discovery, Sarah approached the front desk where a woman clad in round spectacles sat, engrossed in what appeared to be an ancient ledger. Clearing her throat, Sarah introduced herself in a tone steadier than she felt. "I'm looking for family records, possibly something that could relate to my mother," she said, revealing a deep need for understanding her lineage, her voice trembling slightly as she continued. "There are some strange things I found in a locket I inherited from her." The librarian looked up, intrigued. "What names are you searching for?" As Sarah recounted her mother's name, feelings of nostalgia mingled with apprehension. She felt the librarian's eyes sharpen as the woman began typing away, pulling up records that could potentially reshape everything she thought she knew. Minutes transformed into what felt like hours as the librarian led her deeper into the archives. With every piece of preserved history unveiled before her, Sarah felt drawn to questions that plagued her. What had her mother shielded her from? What legacy had been passed down that shaped their lives behind closed doors? Finally, a trove of documents clutched in her hand, she caught sight of something that made her breath catch: a marriage certificate paired with a name she had never heard before. A secret that whispered promises of intrigue and doubt swirled in her mind. What could it mean for her relationship with Jake? Could it explain his apprehensions about their family? With a surge of adrenaline, Sarah left the historical society, clutching the documents tightly. The path she had chosen began to blur before her, but the need to confront her insecurities and forge a deeper connection to her son propelled her forward as she stood at the threshold of her home. A flicker of hope igniting within her, she knew this wasn't about merely unraveling her mother's secrets. It was about challenging the narratives that had shaped her identity and Jake's perception of her. The time had come to bridge the hidden past with the present, to redefine their relationship in a way she had never imagined. Determined to share these revelations with Jake, she felt a rush of adrenaline. The urgency clawing at her heart. Would he understand her struggles? Would he accept the complexity of her identity? Would the truth she had uncovered heal the divide between them or force them further apart? The air felt electric as she prepared herself for confrontation. Tomorrow would not just be another day. It would be the day she would reveal everything she had learned, no matter the outcome. It was no longer simply about revealing secrets. It was about claiming her agency as a mother and potentially redefining her bond with her son. Little did she know that the very foundation of her discoveries would bring a new confrontation she could never have expected. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows across Sarah's living room as she paced the floor. The marriage certificate weighed heavily in her thoughts. Each time she caught sight of the documents strewn across the coffee table, a tempest brewed within her. What did this revelation mean for her relationship with Jake? And more importantly, how had her mother's secrets shaped the life they lived? As evening settled in, Sarah's resolve began to crack. The prospect of opening old wounds felt daunting. But was she willing to sacrifice understanding for comfort? She noted the familiar clutter around her, reminders of her overwhelming responsibilities as a mother, a professional, and now a seeker of truth. Grabbing a pen, she began frantically jotting down her thoughts, mapping out an approach that would make sense to Jake. But the more she wrote, the more her fears tangled her mind. What if Jake rejected the truth she was about to unveil? What if her own insecurities, layered like the dust on the bookshelves in the historical society, clouded her judgment? With each scribbled sentence, the past and present collided, blurring her vision of a hopeful future. Could she reclaim her narrative from her mother's shadows? That night, sleep eluded her. Anxiety wrapped around her like a blanket. Images of Jake flashed through her mind, his laughter, his fleeting moments of vulnerability, and the gnawing silence that often lingered between them in recent years. With a heart heavy with worry, she tried to remind herself that she was not that passive observer anymore. But the stakes felt higher than ever. Early the next morning, coffee in hand, Sarah faced Jake, who was perched on the edge of the couch. His expression was one she couldn't decipher. His presence was both comforting and unsettling, a reminder of the distance that had grown between them. "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady but filled with unspoken emotions. Jake looked up, eyes wary yet curious. "Is it about the locket?" She blinked, surprised at his intuitive observation, but pressed on. "It's about your grandmother and what I found." As she spoke, revealing the buried legacy she had unearthed, she watched emotions flicker across Jake's face: confusion, surprise, and then something that resembled anger. "Why didn't you tell me before?" he asked, voice thick with disbelief. "You wanted to protect me?" "No." Sarah shook her head, her heart racing. "I was protecting myself. I was scared. But I realized that the truth matters more than my fears." Silence enveloped them. Jake's gaze faltered, and frustration clouded his features. As his mother, Sarah felt a heavy responsibility, not just to mend their bond, but to illuminate the complexities of their identities. This wasn't just about her past. It was about his possible future as well. "Maybe you should have kept these secrets," he replied finally, and each word felt like a dagger. "How can I be sure you're not repeating that cycle? How will I know you won't just shut me out?" The raw vulnerability laced in Jake's voice pierced through Sarah's defenses. He was right, and the chilling truth of her pattern of retreating into silence washed over her like ice water. But as the words hung in the air, she also felt the spark of purpose. This was her moment, to challenge him and to challenge herself. "Because I want to stop that cycle," she declared fiercely, her determination now igniting. "I'm here to draw us closer, not push you away. I won't let these secrets define us or dictate our relationship." Jake hesitated. A war waged in his eyes. The conflict opened a fragile space for her to bridge. Would he allow this truth to create understanding, or would it drive an ever-deepening wedge between them? As they continued to address the myriad implications, it felt like standing on the precipice of a breakthrough or a devastating chasm. The unfolding moments cracked the surface of their past, yet the future felt both hopeful and uncertain. Sarah steeled herself for whatever awaited them on this journey of discovery. She understood, in order to build something new, they had to navigate the complicated landscape of their shared history. Tomorrow held the potential for further revelations. Would Jake's acceptance of her journey lead them toward healing or hopelessness? As she looked into his conflicted eyes, she knew one thing for certain: she was ready to face whatever would come next. The silence between them felt suffocating, as if the very air had thickened with unaddressed emotions. Sarah could sense Jake's internal struggle, the war raging behind his eyes as he grappled with the impact of her words. It was a moment of reckoning, and she recognized that this confrontation would shape the course of their relationship. "Tell me more about your mother's past," Jake demanded, his tone a blend of curiosity and frustration. "If we're unraveling secrets, I deserve to understand." His words lit a fire under her resolve. Until now, Sarah had shielded herself from the weightiness of her mother's history, believing ignorance would shield her from pain. But Jake's request pierced that belief with sharp clarity. She took a deep breath, her heart racing as she prepared to navigate the treacherous waters of her family's legacy. It was time to shine a light on the darkness that had haunted her. "My mother was a talented artist," she began. "She painted the things she couldn't say. But with that came a burden, a separation from who she was as a mother. I often felt abandoned by her spirit, like she was living through her art, rather than engaging with me." Jake shifted in his seat, absorbing her words. Was she hiding in those paintings? Or were you not just seeing the truth? Both questions struck deep within Sarah. They were questions she had wrestled with countless times herself. "Maybe both," Sarah whispered, the admission rolling off her tongue like a confession. "I was trying to understand the woman she was, and maybe I projected my own insecurities onto her choices." In that moment, Sarah saw Jake nod, his expression reflecting a mixture of empathy and resolve. "That sounds heavy. I didn't know you felt that way." "Neither did I," Sarah replied, her voice trembling. That's why I allowed those secrets to shape my own narrative. But I want to change that for both of us. Jake sat back, and she noticed a flicker of vulnerability as he began to piece together her revelations. And now we're stuck in this mess because of it? A knot tightened in her stomach. It's not a mess, Jake. It's a chance. A chance to define who we are separate from the past. To stop repeating what wasn't ours to own. She needed his understanding, yet panic loomed. Was her willingness to expose the shadows enough to bring them closer together? His voice lowered, barely above a whisper. I want to trust you, Sarah. But trust takes time, and that's something we may not have. The weight of his words lingered, and for the first time, Sarah felt the boundaries of their evolving relationship. She knew that each step forward would require courage and vulnerability. They were both required to confront their fears and uncertainties. Let us create our own legacy, Sarah suggested, her voice gaining strength. One that doesn't exclude our truths but embraces them. We can start now. Talk through the uncomfortable moments together. As long as we're honest with each other, Jake said, a sense of resolution tinging his tone. No more hiding. No more avoiding. They both blinked at the honesty that hung palpably in the air, the kind that had evaded them for years. But as they forged this new understanding, the shadows of the past loomed at the periphery. Suddenly an image flashed in her mind, the artistic pieces her mother once created, bursting with color yet layered in complexity. What if she could channel that artistic expression into their healing journey? Maybe we could do something together, Sarah proposed, an inspiring spark igniting within her. Art, or I don't know. Something that requires us to work collaboratively, to face the hard truths together. Creating something together could help us, Jake agreed, uncertainty dancing in his words. But what if those truths are too painful to confront? That question cast a long shadow across her optimism. Would they be able to face their deepest fears and emerge stronger? As they stood at this precipice, the conversation hung heavy with possibility, both exhilarating and terrifying. Could she traverse the complexities of their history, while still nurturing a hopeful future together? The uncertainty of what lay ahead loomed large, yet the resolute exchange of vulnerability offered illumination in the darkness. Sarah realized she was in the midst of a transformation, one that bore the weight of her past while spinning hope for the future. What they would create together might also reveal deeper truths hidden beneath layers of discomfort. As the potential for connection swirled amidst tension, Sarah went on, determined to confront whatever truths awaited them on this path. Would they succeed in fostering the bond they yearned for? Or would the shadows threaten to engulf them once more? The sun dipped low in the horizon, casting a warm golden light that filled the room. Yet, in Sarah's mind, shadows loomed more prominently than the luminous rays outside. She leaned against the wooden table cluttered with sketches of her mother's old works, fragments of a life she still hadn't fully uncovered. Each painting illuminated the struggles of a woman torn between passion and obligation, yet Sarah needed to preserve those parts of herself now, amidst raw nerves and gnawing anxieties. Well, if we're going to create something, let us really create, she said with newfound determination, picking up a brush for the first time in years. I want to capture our truths visually, not just talk about them. Her pulse quickened. This felt like not just an artistic endeavor, but a personal exploration, a staging of their emotional landscape. Jake observed her silent enthusiasm, a mix of admiration and skepticism glimmering in his eyes. So you're going back to painting? I get that art can be cathartic, but can we face what we need to face just with brush strokes? His skepticism rattled her, compelling her to confront her insecurities. Was she really enough? Painting isn't just art for me. It's a medium for dialogue. Sometimes we need to create a safe space to redefine ourselves, one brushstroke at a time. It's about vulnerability, just like what we're trying to build. They began laying canvas on the table, their hearts racing as if embarking on a new adventure. As Sarah mixed colors, an array of emotions surged within her: excitement, fear, hope. But this wasn't just about colors. She wanted to paint their shared experiences and the painful histories that shadowed them both. Through artistic expression, they would unveil fragmented truths, and might even come to understand each other better. Let us paint the emotions we feel right now, Sarah suggested, glancing at Jake with a mix of courage and vulnerability. You choose a color that represents what you're feeling about us. Jake hesitated, watching her intently as he reached for a deep blue. its intensity reflecting a sense of sadness and contemplation. This is how I feel. Like I'm standing at the edge, peering into dark waters. She admired his willingness to share something so profound, but she also sensed unresolved fears swirling within him. And for me, Sarah said, selecting a vibrant yellow, I feel hope, the light pushing against the dark. But it's hard to share that when shadows loom so closely. Together they began swathes of colors, each brushstroke a revelation, accompanied by stories intertwined with their pasts and present uncertainties. As they worked, the silence between them shifted. It was no longer suffocating but rather filled with a sense of collaboration and honesty. They stumbled over the complexity of emotions, and each color unveiled layers of hidden truths, theirs and their ancestors, twisted yet intimately bound. Midway through their session, an unexpected realization struck Sarah with the force of a jolt. What if the art isn't just about the end product? What if the process itself reveals our truths? The uncomfortable awkwardness we often sidestep? She paused, her eyes searching Jake's. Can we trust that together we can handle what unfolds from there? His brow furrowed, a flicker of fear crossing his face. What if those truths tear us apart more than they bind us? Are we ready for the chasms beneath all this? Silencing her own doubts, Sarah felt a fierce determination to push through the discomfort. We can't know unless we try, she asserted, directing brush to canvas with conviction. This could define who we are going forward, but we must let our past inform, not define our present. As they painted, each vibrant hue swirling into one another, Sarah pondered the weight of her mother's legacy, an artist who captured the world even while losing herself within it. Could she find that footing again, or was she destined to recreate her own patterns of distance? The possibility hung heavily in the air, and Sarah understood that every stroke brought them closer to confronting deeper fears, perhaps even drawing out unsettling truths. They were left hanging in the balance between connection and the potential for chaos as questions loomed larger than answers. In that resonance of creation, new revelations began to surface. Would they forge something meaningful or unravel under the pressure of their own expectations? As they dipped their brushes into a restless sea of emotion, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that each stroke might push them deeper into the abyss or perhaps guide them into light. The taste of uncertainty lingered, as if they were both perched at the edge of something monumental ready to unfold. Would they transform the canvas, or would it ultimately become just another reflection of what they were too afraid to confront? Sarah barely noticed the fading sunlight as she lost herself in the rhythm of painting. Each brushstroke felt like a revelation, a dialogue with both her past and the present turmoil that enveloped her and Jake. She could feel her walls crumbling, exposing vulnerabilities she had tucked away for far too long. The once familiar fears that had held her captive now mingled with a physiological response, the quickening of her heartbeat, the trembling of her hands, all signaling an awakening. Sarah, is this really how you want to express all this? Jake's voice snapped her back to reality. His tone was less skeptical now, more contemplative. I mean, it's beautiful, but are we just masking the deeper issues? His observation hit hard. Was she only painting over the pain rather than exposing it? Each color, almost superficial in its vibrance, seemed to stare back at her, demanding honesty. She felt like a child hiding behind the facade of a playful masterpiece, putting on a show while suppressing her inner disarray. No, this is supposed to be cathartic, she replied, shaking off the weight of his question. Yet, doubt crept in, challenging her newfound confidence. I don't want to simply brush over it, Jake, she confessed, staring at the stark contrast between the dark blue and the hopeful yellow. I want to explore what it means to really connect and maybe even unearth what's been suppressed for too long. I want to understand both my mother's struggles and my own. Jake regarded her, the shadows of his own fears beginning to lift. Then let us confront it. Let us embrace the chaos of the emotions and trust this process. That includes all of it, the regrets, the misunderstandings, and the shadows that haunt us. Together they exchanged colors several more times, plunging headfirst into the darker shades that represented doubts and regrets. Sarah felt an unfamiliar thrill course through her as she dipped her brush into the murky depths of her emotions. Letting go of her inhibitions was liberating. It felt as if she was reaching into the very fabric of her identity, connecting with something primal and essential. Yet, with each stroke, she was reminded of the consequences of exposing her truths. The complexity of her relationship with her mother stared back at her from the canvas, almost tauntingly. Was she repeating the patterns of fear rooted deep within her of measuring her worth against the expectations of others? As the colors clashed and matched, Sarah felt an unexpected surge of clarity. Our past doesn't dictate who we are. It simply guides us. Those heavy threads can weave into a new tapestry if we're willing to engage with them. Jake leaned in closer, intrigued. So how do we face the raw truth without losing ourselves? Especially if we touch upon the rupture between you and your mother? What if we unlock something that's been locked away for too long? His questions sliced through her doubts, and she felt the urgency to respond. It's about strength and vulnerability. It's about understanding that revealing ourselves doesn't have to lead to rejection. We can own our stories. I can own mine regardless of how painful. Jake nodded, eyes wide with realization. And maybe that's where we find answers. If we can peel back the layers, there's liberation and honesty in not bending to fit the mold we've created. With renewed vigor, they returned to the canvas, pouring a kaleidoscope of emotions into their work. The complexity of their shared histories began to manifest in swirling patterns, a chaotic yet beautiful reflection of their struggles. The canvas was no longer just a representation, it was a testament to their evolving journey. Together we'll confront the discomfort, Sarah declared, her voice steadier now. We'll expose the depths of who we are, and maybe, just maybe, we'll emerge transformed. As the final strokes dried, she stepped back, breathing deeply. The canvas radiated a tumultuous yet invigorating energy, yet uncertainty gnawed at her. Although fear lingered in her chest, there was a glimmer of something else. Hope wrapped in the unknown. But as shadows lengthened in the room, a thought gnawed at her. Even as they prepared to delve deeper into the revelations of their art, she wasn't entirely sure she was prepared for what lay ahead. What if the truths that emerged were more painful than enlightening? Feeling that precarious weight once more, she turned to Jake, ready to discuss their next steps, her heart racing. Would they be brave enough to tread where both darkness and light collided, or would fear hold them hostage once again? Something told her the real challenge was only just beginning. The walls seemed to pulse with every breath Sarah took, filled with the remnants of their artistic confrontation. The sunset painted the room in hues of orange and violet, yet Sarah felt a chill creeping into her bones, an uncomfortable realization pressing against her ribs. Do you think it's too much? She asked Jake, her voice barely above a whisper. She hadn't intended to doubt herself yet again, but every conversation she'd ever had about her mother's influence seemed to resurface like a relentless tide. Was she once again overexposing herself to pain? Jake met her gaze, his expression steady. It's never too much if it's authentic. Whatever you're feeling is still valid. His words were intended to be reassuring, yet they felt like another challenge. What if authenticity unearthed the very things she wanted to remain buried? Taking a deep breath, she turned her focus back to the canvas. Each layer of paint told a story, a conflict between bright aspirations and the darkness of reality. But reality often felt like a disjointed puzzle, each piece representing a fear she was unwilling to face. How could she reconcile her intentions with the legacy of her past? She dipped her brush into a deep crimson, representing the hurt that had festered throughout the years. Every stroke felt cathartic, yet she sensed the weight of unspoken memories coiling tighter in her chest. Was she doomed to revisit the same cycles, perpetually trying to extract meaning from chaos? What do we do next? Jake's voice broke through her spiral of thoughts, nudging her back into the present. Do we keep painting? Or is it time to write? Writing. The very word struck a chord deep within her. It was a medium she had long abandoned in favor of visual art. Wasn't that where her own voice truly lived? Among lines of narrative and the delicate unveiling of hidden truths? The idea of confronting her mother's story through prose sparked an ember of excitement in her. What if, instead of merely painting, she could add layers of dialogue, revisit conversations that had never taken place? I think I need to write, she replied, a newfound clarity washing over her. Words have always felt like home, an intimate way to dissect emotions. Perhaps it's time I confront her through the page. Jake's eyes lit up with encouragement. That's a powerful shift. Writing may help bring more rawness to the art too. You can merge the two mediums, let the narrative inform your canvas. Sarah felt the swell of determination within her, pushing against the hesitation that had once held her captive. Picking up a blank notepad she had abandoned in the corner, a rush of ideas surged through her. The act of writing had been sidelined for years, but now it beckoned her with the promise of exploration as the pen met paper. Her handwriting flowed unrestrained, stream of consciousness thoughts revealing tensions and forgotten dialogues. The recollections flooded in. Sharp words exchanged, silence that stretched on like an eternity, and the longing for connection that twisted into resentment. Each sentence forged a closer bond between her fears and the identity she wished to claim. Yet, the deeper she delved into the memories, the more turbulent her emotions became. The recollection of moments burgeoning with disappointment and yearning sent her racing thoughts spiraling. What if her quest for understanding only intensified the envy and grief she tried to navigate? Pen trembling, she hesitated. "Are you all right?" Jake's voice broke through once again, pulling her back to reality. She exhaled heavily, looking up into his concerned gaze. "I think I'm starting to understand just how intertwined we are with our past. But it's terrifying to think of what it could mean, what it could unveil." "You don't have to do it alone, Sarah," he said softly. "Whatever comes next from your writing, whatever truths you face, I'm here to help you navigate through it. We face it together." The connection they had forged now felt like an unbreakable strand woven through the complexities of her emotions. But as she responded with a nod, a question haunted her. Would her healing be worth the pain of reliving the past, especially if it unveiled truths she might not be ready to confront? Deep within her, the storm of her history brewed, promising more revelations. With each written word, she sensed the tension electrifying the air between them. It was clear they were on the brink of something monumental, and the prospect thrilled and terrified her. But what would happen when she fully faced the shadows of her mother's legacy? Would she emerge stronger? Or were there still more ghosts to confront? The pen hovered above the page, her heartbeat echoing in her ears as Sarah clutched the notepad. The swirling thoughts in her mind urged her to write, yet they simultaneously held her captive. Each blank line was an invitation, and a threat. What if the truth she struggled to confront shattered the fragile veneer of her progress? With a firm resolve, she grounded herself in the moment. The quiet room enveloped her. She could hear the soft rustle of pages turning in Jake's sketchbook, but even his presence felt distant as she wrestled with what she thought she could no longer ignore. She scribbled the first line, and an unexpected floodgate opened. "I used to think my mother was a hurricane, chaotic and destructive, but perhaps she was just battling her own storms." The realization struck. Sarah had always painted her mother's actions in one-dimensional strokes. How much of the narrative had she stripped away? Each word she penned seemed to build a bridge to her abandoned past, a past she now realized was filled with whispered fears and misunderstood intentions. Midway through the exploration of her mother's contradictions, Sarah felt an unsettling sensation rise in her throat. Anger bubbled at the surface as she recalled memories that gouged her heart. Why had her mother made her feel so unwanted at times? Patterns of neglect collided with moments of fierce love, creating a web of emotional turmoil that was exhausting to untangle. Is this what she was fighting against? Her mind churned, and with it, the ink flowed as she dissected familial ties with an intensity she had never dared to apply before. Each realization carved deeper into her understanding of self. Trapped in her mother's shadows for so long, had she overlooked her own pain in favor of making excuses for it? The warmth in the room became oppressive as she wrestled with the evolving narrative, a mental tug-of-war pulling her back into memories she'd rather forget. The pen scratched against the paper, each stroke oscillating between her past fears and newfound insights. To truly face my mother's story, I must also confront my own, she thought, the words resonating with an undeniable power. "Sarah." Jake's voice sliced through the murky haze, reminding her she wasn't completely alone in this journey. "It's incredible what you're writing." She looked up, his gaze unwavering and supportive, but twinkling with curiosity about her internal struggle. "But at what cost?" she pondered quietly, battling the urge to withdraw. "Thanks," she replied, her voice steadying as she absorbed the encouragement. But would the catharsis of writing lead to clarity, or would it only magnify her sense of loss? Her heart raced as she contemplated the consolidation of art and words, deepening the narrative she was building with each sentence. The clock ticked rhythmically in the background, each second a reminder that time didn't pause for revelations. With each completed page, she felt a change brewing within, but it felt both exhilarating and terrifying. She was charting unfamiliar territory, a self-discovery that could either liberate her or trap her deeper in emotional conflict. Do you think confronting my mother's choices will help me understand my own? She posed, half to Jake and half to herself. That's the goal, right? To understand how those choices shaped you, he replied, leaning closer. But remember, you're not responsible for her decisions. They were hers alone. Her heart clenched at that. Shedding the weight of her mother's history seemed insurmountable. What if, in coming to terms with her mother's influence, she discovered aspects of herself she feared acknowledging? A part of her craved confrontation, a reckoning not only with her mother but with the echoes of her past that still haunted her present. Looking back at the notepad, she took a deep breath, ready to plunge deeper into the fray of family ghosts, shadows that had long needed light. Yet just as she pressed down the pen again, her phone buzzed. Unfamiliar energy coursed through her as she grabbed it, her breath hitching in her throat. Was this the call that would unravel the delicate threads she had just begun to weave into understanding? As she hesitated, anticipation gripped her. What truth did this moment hold? And would it propel her toward resolution or further entangle her in the tumultuous history she was beginning to rewrite? The screen lit up with an incoming call from an unknown number, the weight of its potential pressing against her chest. For a moment, Sarah hovered between answering it and putting the phone back down, absorbed in her writing. The weight of her unresolved emotions almost made her forget the urgency of the moment, but that could wait. This call held a promise or a threat. Taking a deep breath, she swiped her finger across the screen. Hello? Sarah. The voice sounded unfamiliar but carried a hint of concern. It's Amy. We need to talk. A spark of anxiety prickled along her spine. Amy was her mother's old friend, someone she had seen only occasionally. The tone was serious and Sarah's instincts kicked in. She braced herself, anticipating troubling news. Sure, she said, keeping her voice neutral. What's going on? There was a brief pause as if Amy were considering her words. I'm worried about your mother. She's not doing well emotionally. I think she could use your support. Despite the instinctual catch of compassion in her throat, an unexpected wave of frustration surged inside her. Support? That word echoed mockingly in the chamber of her memories, where so many times she had been the one needing support. What do you want me to do? She asked, attempting to suppress the intensity of her emotions. I think it's time to let go of the past, Sarah. The pain, it's all stuck in the both of you. She needs to know you're there for her. What did Amy know about her past? About the rage that continually festered within her? What would it take for people to truly see the complex tapestry of her relationship with her mother? I've spent years trying to understand our history, Sarah finally replied, her voice sharp. What makes you think I can just let it go now? I'm not saying it's easy, but you have to acknowledge the love that was intertwined with the hurt. Her chest tightened. This couldn't be merely about understanding her mother. Amy's plea felt like an echo of all the conversations Sarah had had with herself. Did she need to confront her mother again? Was it time to redefine boundaries? Let me think about it, she said, her determination faltering. The decision weighed heavy, one that began to pry open old wounds while igniting glimpses of hope. After hanging up, Sarah felt disoriented. This conversation stirred something deep within her. The swirling vortex of unresolved feelings resurfaced, merging with her insights from the notepad. She glanced over at Jake, still engrossed in his sketches. What just happened? She asked, trying to gauge how his presence might anchor her newfound storm. I think Amy opened a door you've been hesitant to push against, he observed, setting down his pencil. But what do you want? Do you feel ready to confront her? Part of me wants to, she admitted, frustration weaving through her tone. But I don't want to keep cleaning up messes or diving into the same cycle. What if it pushes me back into that ugly turmoil? Jake's expression turned serious, kind yet probing. Is the fear of repeating history holding you back from a chance for clarity? Maybe there's a way to approach it on your own terms. As new insights flickered amidst her worries, Sarah sensed a burgeoning determination. This could be the turn she needed. The confrontation that transformed her unresolved conflict into growth. She could allow the process to be hers, framing it in a way that safeguarded her complexities while still reaching for understanding. The pen and notepad beckoned her once more, each blank page a canvas for articulation. Could she write her mother's story as part of her own, or were the walls too high to scale? With growing resolve, she slid toward the notepad, ready to explore what confrontation might mean to her life path. Each word she wrote from now on would be a step toward clarity. Then, just as she began to write, her phone buzzed again, this time with a text that made her heart skip. You should know your mother is planning something big. A surprise. You might want to call her back. As her stomach twisted in equal parts trepidation and curiosity, Sarah realized that the threads of her past were beginning to pull at her tighter than ever, leaving her unsure of where they would lead next. Fueled by both resolve and uncertainty, Sarah's spirit surged with fresh vigor as she sat down at her desk. The swirl of emotions tangled within her like a palette of colors waiting to be applied to canvas. This was no longer just about understanding her mother's past. It was about reclaiming her own narrative, about uncovering the hidden layers of herself she had kept sealed within. The day had arrived. It was time for confrontation, but this time on her own terms. As she penned her thoughts into words, they flowed like vibrant brushstrokes across a canvas, revealing the complexities that had long been buried beneath silence. She grappled with the shades of anger and love, the confusion that once tangled her heart, and the hope that hovered just beyond her reach. I used to think my mother was my greatest burden, she wrote, but perhaps she was instead my greatest teacher. A whirlwind of chaos that taught me the depths of resilience. Each line blossomed into a celebration of her transformation, each revelation a step toward understanding herself better. Jake entered the room, observing her focus with a contemplative gaze. You're diving deep, he remarked, his tone encouraging yet weighted with understanding. It feels like you're really uncovering layers of yourself. I assent it? She nodded, setting down her pen momentarily. This is liberating yet terrifying. I realize now that confronting my past doesn't mean erasing it, it's about embracing it to evolve into who I want to become. The lightness in her heart began to outweigh the heaviness that had once dimmed her spirit. With renewed determination, she wove a narrative of acceptance over her mother's flaws and strengths. She began to see that each moment spent grappling with shadows had served to build her resilience. I can rewrite our story, she vowed to herself. Not as a tale of abandonment, but as one of survival. The next morning, fueled by a sense of urgency and realization, Sarah picked up the phone. Heart racing, she dialed her mother's number. The words she had practiced slipped steadily into the conversation as soon as her mother answered, empathetic yet fierce. I want to understand what's been happening. To face it together instead of in whispers. The tentative exchanges morphed into an open dialogue, a cacophony of raw truths, passion, and fear dancing between them. They acknowledged the splintered history, each confession like a brushstroke connecting their fractured lives. By acknowledging her mother's imperfections, Sarah found forgiveness, but more importantly, she began to forgive herself for harboring resentment. They discovered the value of vulnerability in both light and shadow, and as they shared their burdens, the years of estrangement began to fade like a distant memory. Weeks rolled into months, and with each brushstroke on their canvases, their relationship developed into a masterpiece, one built on mutual respect and understanding. They created art together, but more importantly, they created space for one another to be authentic. Then came the day Sarah received an invitation from Jake, a real invitation that honored her, representing the revival of their bond. This time he expressed a need for her presence, no longer cloaked in the fear of discomfort. As she stood by him on his wedding day, enveloped in a sea of shared love and acceptance, Sarah felt a profound sense of achievement. Each step to this moment demonstrated her evolution from insecurity to strength. A final sigh of relief washed over her as she watched Jake bond with his future in-laws, not as an exclusion from their world, but as a bridge representing her growth and his acceptance. In his eyes, she glimpsed a recognition more potent than words, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they had both taken. Sarah had conquered her doubts, bridged chasms of misunderstanding, and established a solid place in her son's life. This transformation of victory painted in vibrant strokes became her legacy, a story of reclaiming her identity, fostering connection, and building the narrative she had once believed lost in the shadows. Now feeling truly whole and recognized as a competent mother, Sarah held her head high, no longer lost in the echoes of pain but liberated through the process of creation. In this grand tapestry of life, She had proven that even estrangement could evolve into understanding, and past burdens could lead to liberating truths. If you found inspiration in this transformative tale, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to help this powerful message reach more souls searching for connection. Comment below your reactions and theories about Sarah's journey and the impact of vulnerability on relationships. Don't wait even one more second to share this uplifting video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Together, let us inspire growth and healing.